Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Earlier this week, we talked about the top 12 running backs on Underdog's CFF Best Ball Mania contest. Now, they still have the transfer portal and the tailgate contest open, but with college football starting in just 2 days, with Florida State and Georgia Tech kicking things off in Ireland, Underdog also released season-long player props for passing yards, rushing yards, and receiving yards for some of the top players in the country. So, we're going to look at the board, and I'm going to share with you some of my favorite season-long player prop bets for the 2024 season. Let's dive in. Alright, so when we're looking at the player props available, the first position we got to start with is obviously the quarterback. But quarterback's a little tough based on Underdog's projections. Last year, at the Power 4 level, only 12 quarterbacks threw for 3,000 or more yards during the regular season. But Underdog has 10 quarterbacks with player props set at 3,000 or more. So there's not a lot of wiggle room on the over. Now, inevitably, some of these quarterbacks are going to go under based on injuries, missed time, and just general benching. But it's hard to tell which ones are going to fall victim to any of those situations. So I'm only going to look at overs, and I got two in mind. The first one is kind of off the beaten path. We're not looking at Oregon, Ole Miss, Jackson Dart. We're not looking at Shadur Sanders. We're going to Kentucky, and we're looking at Brock Vandagriff. So Brock Vandagriff's player prop is only set at 2,200 yards. I have him projected for 2,750 yards. A little history on Vandagriff. He was the 34th overall recruit and the number 5 quarterback in the 2021 class. He went to Georgia and sat behind Stetson Bennett while they won 2 straight national championships, and then lost the job to Carson Beck in 2023, which turned out to be a pretty good decision for the Bulldogs. He decided he wanted to play, and now he's at Kentucky. 2,200 is extremely low. Vandagriff only has to average 183 yards per game to meet this number, and even though Kentucky's not a high-powered offense, we've routinely seen that number reached by their quarterbacks. Last year in 2023, Devin Leary, who frankly wasn't very good, still threw for 2,700 yards. And then the 2 years prior, Will Levis in 2021 threw for 2,827, clearing this by over 600. And then in 2022, which was a down year for Levis, which saw his draft stock fall, he was hurt, offensive line was hurt, they had freshmen at receiver with Barry and Brown and Dane Key, and he still got to 2,400 yards, clearing this number. Now, there is a new offensive coordinator for Kentucky, Bush Hamdan, but he saw some success with his quarterbacks too. In 2023, he had a committee approach with Taylor Green and Max Madsen at Boise State, and the two of those combined for 2,943 yards, clearing this by nearly 750. In 2022, Hamdan was the offensive coordinator at Missouri, and he led Brady Cook to post 2,739 yards, clearing this by over 500. So we've seen that Kentucky's had success clearing this number by a wide margin, and Bush Hamdan quarterbacks have also cleared this number by a wide margin. To make things a little bit better, Vandagriff doesn't really have anyone competing with him for a job. Gavin Wimsatt transferred in from Rutgers after the spring, but he's bad. I'm just being honest. Now, Kentucky does play in the SEC. There are some tough games on the schedule, but there are also a lot of easy ones. Kentucky gets Southern Miss, Ohio, Murray State, Vanderbilt, South Carolina, and Florida, all bottom of the half of the country pass defenses. Now, they're tough ones. They do have Georgia. That's going to be a tough game. Probably not get to 200 yards. But the other 3 ranked opponents, Ole Miss, Tennessee, and Texas, not exactly known for their pass defense or solid secondary. Lastly, Kentucky brought in Chip Trayanum for Kentucky to replace Ray Davis in the backfield at running back. Now, Chip was projected to have a big role in this offense, but he recently broke his hand in fall camp and is right now projected to miss the first few weeks of the season. Any reduction in rush volume or run rate for this Kentucky offense is only going to help Brock Vandagriff reach this low 2,200 yard mark for the 2024 season. So we're going to add Brock Vandagriff to the list over 2,200 and a half passing yards. The second quarterback we're going to look at is another transfer. This time we're heading down to Tallahassee and looking at the journeyman DJ Uiagalelei. I think I pronounced that right. Now, his projected yards, or his prop total, is set a little bit higher than Vandagriff at 2,350. I have DJU, we're going to call him DJU for the rest of this segment. I have him projected for 2,800 yards, so clearing this by 450 yards. Similar to Kentucky, Florida State has had some recent success from the quarterback position. Jordan Travis in 2023 threw for 2,750 yards in just 11 games before getting injured, and the team as a total threw for 3,400 yards, so clearing this number by nearly 1,000. In 2022, We saw more of the same from Jordan Travis, who threw for 3,200 yards. So the last 2 years, the starting quarterback for Florida State under Mike Norvell can be expected to throw anywhere from 3,200 to 3,400 passing yards in a season. And DJU's had history clearing this number in the past. Now, in 2021, he threw for only 2,300 yards at Clemson in his first year as a starter, but I'll give him a little bit of a break as that was his first year replacing Trevor Lawrence. And he only missed it by 50 yards. In 2022, his second year at Clemson, we saw an improvement and he got to 2,500 yards. Then in 2023, when he transferred to Oregon State last year, he threw for 2,638 yards. So he's cleared this in 2 or 3 years, and the Florida State quarterback the last 2 years has cleared this number. Similar to Kentucky, I think DJU has a pretty easy schedule of pass defenses. They got Georgia Tech, Boston College, Memphis, Cal, North Carolina, Charleston Southern, and Florida, just like Kentucky. Sensing a theme there. I'm pretty confident that DJU is going to be the locked-in starter for the entire season for Florida State. There's not much behind him except for the freshman quarterback Luke Kromenhoek, the 4-star. But he's not ready to play. DJU is going to be the starter for the entire season. Unless he gets hurt, I don't see how he doesn't get to 2,500 yards. I mean, 2,350 is not exactly a difficult number to reach. And Florida State to be playing in some games with some high totals. Memphis, Cal, North Carolina, Georgia Tech, the first week, all going to be near 60. So I like DJU. Now, I know not everyone loves him, but we know exactly what we're going to get from him. He's a very high floor player, going to throw for around 2,500 yards, and that clears this number as long as he doesn't stay hurt. So we're going over here as well. Now that marks the end of the quarterbacks. Like I said, there's not a lot of value I see at that position with the passing yard total so high, but I do see a lot of value at running backs. And one running back is someone we talked about extensively at the video earlier this week. I can't spell, and his name, Taj Brooks. Now, Taj Brooks had the 4th most rushing yards last year, ran for 1,538 yards for Texas Tech. He's a workhorse. I had him projected for 1,326 yards, so just over 300 yards past this number. It might be a little bit of a square play, and I might be, reading the tea leaves too much, but all off season, Joey McGuire and the Texas Tech coaching staff have been over the moon about how complimentary they've been to Brooks and how much they are really thanking him for staying in Lubbock for one more year instead of leaving during the transfer portal. They've also been very vocal in the media to try and get Brooks the school's all-time rushing record. Now, Brooks has just over 3,000. I don't remember what the number is off the top of my head, but here's a quote from Joey McGuire about Taj Brooks. He's the same guy every day. He's an absolutely incredible teammate. And we're 1,167 yards away from tying Hanspard's record. Hanspard must hold the record. And we're 1,168 yards away from breaking it. And our plan is to break it this season. Now, I know that's coach speak, and I know they can do what they want or say what they want about trying to get him that record. But 1,168 is very feasible after we saw what he did last year. I'm all in on Brooks based on my projection and clearing this number by over 300. And now we get the added bonus of Joey McGuire pushing for this record late in the season. Even if Brooks misses a game, last 2 games of the season, he might get 30 carries each just to try and get this record. And if he gets the record, he gets his prop total as well. So we're going over 1,025.5 yards for Taj Brooks. Another running back we mentioned on this week's Top 12 CFF video was Minnesota's Darius Taylor. I have him projected for 1,378 yards, and if he gets to 1,168, he clears this prop total by over 100. So, and similar to Taj Brooks, I have him clearing this by over 350. Now, Darius Taylor is a unique case of projecting. He was a true freshman last year, and in only 5 games, he rushed for 799 yards. That's like an 1,800-yard pace. He was plagued by injury most of the season, hence why he only played 5 games. But in those 5 games, he had 137 carries. That's 27.5 per game and on pace for 328 on the season. Now, I don't think he quite reaches that number, but Minnesota does have a history of leaning on workhorse running backs. Since P.J. Fleck took over at the head coach of Minnesota, 5 of his last 7 running backs have reached this 1,025-yard mark. The only reason that the other 2 didn't was in 2023 when Darius Taylor was injured, and in 2021 when Mo Ibrahim got injured. So let's look at the history of Minnesota running backs under P.J. Fleck. 2017, Rodney Smith, 1,158 yards, over. In 2018, Mo Ibrahim, 1,160 yards, over. In 2019, Rodney Smith again, 1,163, over. In 2020, the COVID season, Mo Ibrahim ran for 1,076 yards in only 7 games. Crushed this number. Now in 2021, Mo Ibrahim got hurt in the very first game of the season, tore his Achilles against Ohio State. But he did run for 163 yards in that game. Would have easily gone over on the season. Instead, they had a committee approach. The 3 guys each ran for 550 or more yards, and the 3 of them combined for 2,075. You combine any 2 of their yardage totals, they easily go over this number. In 2022, Mo Ibrahim's healthy again, 1,665 yards. Crushes this number. And then, like I said, in 2023, Darius Taylor only rushes for 799 yards in those 5 games. Probably would have crushed this number, but him and his backup combined for 1,360 on the season. There's a pretty clear trend for flex running backs. They go over 1,025 yards. Now, they don't have the easiest slate of opposing schedules. They do have Iowa, really good defense. Michigan, probably the best defensive line in the country, easily the 2 best defensive tackles in the country. Penn State, always a great defense. And Wisconsin, always the top half of the country. But Darius Taylor's going to rush like 250 times this year, maybe 275. And if it's anything like Ibrahim, he could get close to 300. So he just has to rush for like 4.5 yards a carry, and he's going to kill this number. I don't get this total at all. I mean, obviously there's injury risk. He got hurt last year, but he was a true freshman, 18 years old. But now he's a year older, a year more experienced, a year healthier. We're going over on Darius Taylor. All right, the third and final running back for this prop show is a third running back I mentioned on my top 12 CFF list earlier in the week. And we're staying in the Big Ten, but we're going to Rutgers, and we're looking at Kyle Monangai. Kyle Monangai's prop total is only set at 1,000 yards, and he rushed for 1,262 last year, and I have him projected right around that at 1,287. Now I'm a big Monangai fan. If you watched earlier this week's video, you know I'm a big Monangai fan. I'm not afraid to admit he's my guy this year. And there's a lot of good reason for why. Gavin Wimsatt was a starting quarterback last year, and he was much more a running back than quarterback. He was second on the team in rushing yards with 497. He transferred out. They brought in eighth in Calic Manis from Purdue, and he's no Gavin Wimsatt. He rushed for only 94 total yards last year, and he's only rushed for 230 yards in his entire career. So that opens up a ton of rushing value for Monangai, when he already crushed this by 275 last year. To make this even better, Rutgers' schedule is really easy. They're one of the teams that's going to benefit the most from the new no division format in the Big Ten. No more Ohio State, no more Penn State, no more Michigan, or at least on a consistent basis. And this year in 2024, they avoid all 3 of the top dogs in the Big Ten. And similar to Darius Taylor, I have Monangai projected for over 250 carries this year. If he stays healthy, he's going to crush this number. And just like Taylor, I don't get it. We're going over on Kyle Monangai. This is probably my favorite bet in the whole board. Okay, so the last player we're going to look at on the board today is a wide receiver, and that's Florida's Eugene Wilson. Now, last year, Eugene Wilson only had 583 receiving yards in 10 games, which was only a 650-yard pace, so less than the 700-yard mark. But I have him projected for 940 because Florida loses Ricky Pearsall to the NFL, and that frees up 87 targets and 965 yards. Now, Eugene Wilson was one of the top wide receiver recruits in the 2023 class, and he showed why last year. He's lightning fast and great with the ball in his hands. Billy Napier, the head coach of Florida, said all offseason that Eugene Wilson can be the focal point of this offense, especially after the loss of star running back Trevor Etienne to Georgia. Napier really wants to focus on increasing Wilson's ADOT, which was only 2.8 last year, and allow Wilson to be a more vertical threat in the passing game. And that passing game wasn't all that bad. No Graham Mertz gets a bad rap for what we saw him do at Wisconsin, but it wasn't that bad last year. He threw for 3,000 yards, had 25 touchdowns, and had a 73% completion percentage. So, with that in mind, we're going over 700.5 for Eugene Wilson at Florida. All right, there you have it, my 6 favorite season-long college football player props on Underdog. Let's go through my top 6 one more time just for a recap. We have Brock Vandagriff, Kentucky's quarterback, over 2,200 passing yards. We got DJ Uiagalelei. Still think I'm pronouncing that right. The Florida State quarterback, over 2,350 passing yards. Taj Brooks, Texas Tech, going for the record, over 1,025 rushing yards. Darius Taylor, the Minnesota workhorse, over 1,025 rushing yards as well. My guy, the CFF darling, Kyle Monangai, over 1,000 rushing yards for Rutgers. And then Eugene Wilson, the Florida speedster, over 700.5 receiving yards. All right, there you have it, my 6 favorite season-long college football player props on Underdog for the 2024 season. Parlay all 6 of them together, maybe 2, maybe 3, go all the way up to 8. Be crazy with it, and we're going to come back in 5 months and see how it paid out. I want to thank everybody for watching. If you could leave a like, a sub, and I want to hear from you in the comments which one of those props is a lock and which one of those props is never going to hit, and I'm an idiot. Either way, the college football season is right around the corner. Week 0 kicks off in 48 hours. It's going to be a really fun season, and I can't wait. Peace.